Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Motorsports for another daily live Formula 1 news video, and going straight into it today, how did Mercedes and Ferrari fall foul of Formula 1's plank rules? Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's post-race disqualification at the US Grand Prix was the first time in years that cars have fallen foul of Formula 1's plank rules. In fact, there have been remarkably few times in Formula 1's history that planks have been found to have worn down too much, with the most famous still being Michael Schumacher's disqualification from the '94 Belgian Grand Prix. This makes it even more intriguing that in an area of the car that teams are very mindful of This makes it even more intriguing that in an area of the car that teams are very mindful of, there being no room for error, two of the top squads tripped up on the same race weekend. The explanations of how the rule breaches happened seem to be clear, which is why both teams had to simply accept their fate with the stewards. As Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff said, there's no wiggle room in the rules. We need to take it on the chin, do the learning, and come back stronger. The tolerance between success and failure over plank legality is tiny, given that there can be no more than 1 millimeter of wear between a freshly fitted plank and one that's gone through all the rigors of a race. To check compliance within the rules, the FIA is able to measure wear on the plank at 4 50mm diameter holes drilled into the surface at specific locations designated within the regulations. In the instance of Leclerc and Hamilton, it was the rearmost hole that failed their tests. This hole must be positioned at the car's centerline between 825mm and 1025mm ahead of the rear axle line. As can be seen from the main image, this in itself offers some variability as to how wear can occur on different cars, given that there is no specific point for the draw hole, unlike the 3 holes at the front of the plank. The draw holes made in the plank are surrounded by flush-mounted titanium skid plates. These offer further protection from wear and are also tightly regulated in their design. This is an area that the FIA has been closely monitoring with the new generation of cars, and it has served several technical directives as a response to inconsistencies in their design already. One interesting discussion point after disqualifications was that the FIA did not check the planks of all the other cars on the grid. This is standard procedure though, as it would be impossible for the governing body to check compliance of every aspect of every car. It is why it selects random elements every time from random cars in the bid to check compliance throughout the grid. On this occasion, Max Verstappen's RB19, Charles Leclerc's FF23, and Lewis Hamilton's W14, alongside Lando Norris's MCL60, were all chosen to have their planks checked. The Red Bull and McLaren were given the all clear, whereas the Ferrari and Mercedes were not. The technical reason for why their planks were worn down too much is simple to explain. Their cars were running too low to the ground throughout the race on the Grand Prix race weekend. The cause of this revolves around the choice of ride height, something that teams play around over each weekend. But it can also be influenced by fuel loads and even DRS use, as the aero load comes on and off the car. Teams normally have plenty of time on a Grand Prix race weekend to get their ride height into their sweet spot. But the car is low enough. Teams normally have plenty of time on a Grand Prix weekend to get their ride height into a sweet spot where the plank is not in danger of being worn away, but the car is low enough to deliver maximum performance. However, this balance has proved harder to manage at sprint races, with teams just having one practice session to get their car dialed in for the entire race weekend. As a consequence of the more condensed timetable, there is an inability to cover the qualifying and long-run programs that are regularly done. Any ride height calculations made during this FP1 session must account for the additional competitive running that is added into the weekend schedule, as there are extra competitive sessions taking place once the cars are locked in. Furthermore, teams are not able to change the plank as freely as they normally are once the cars are in parc fermé, so there is a certain element of guesswork going on. We have already seen times this year, like with Alpine and Baku, where teams have realised after the sprint that the ride heights were too low, and that there was a risk of the plank being worn too much in the main race. Cars have then been pulled out of parc fermé to make the ride height changes and started from the pit lane. Ferrari revealed after the race that it had spent time during its FP1 racing the ride height of its cars, in order to find an optimum range for the race weekend, once it became clear how bumpy the track was. But it clearly did not raise the ride height enough. Intriguingly, it also suggested that the weather may have played a factor in how things played out. A stronger wind intensity that was originally forecast along with the change in direction perhaps meant that the car was being forced down further in areas of the track that it had in practice, pushing the plank on the ground. The situation though at Austin was also made more complicated by the bumpy nature of the circuit, which was described by Verstappen as not being up to Formula 1 standards. Another potential factor would also be related to the tyres, as it may not be a coincidence that two cars that fell foul of the plank issues were also those that ran extended opening stints. We know that as the tyres wear, there's less tread left, which not only reduces grip, but means that the temperature is also able to escape. This can result in lower pressures as tyres get towards the end of their life, and that has the consequence of a lower ride height. In both Hamilton and Leclerc's case, they ran longer first stints on the medium tyre in order to create a strategic offset to Verstappen and Norris, with Leclerc opting to make a one-stop strategy work against his rivals on two stoppers. This could have opened the door for an extra plank wear in this period of the race, when the car was still quite heavy on fuel. All these above elements came together to push the Mercedes and the Ferrari outside of the tolerated window. As Mercedes trackside engineer director Andrew Chauvelin explained, unfortunately, it is one of the pitfalls of the sprint format, where we have a solitary hour of running before Parc Fermé. Without running at a full race fuel load in FP1, combined with a circuit as bumpy as this in parts of the track where the drivers have to put the car during the bumpy Grand Prix, have contributed to the higher than expected wear levels. We will go away from this weekend and learn from this though. It will be very interesting to see if at bumpy sprint venues, with Interlagos coming up, teams will now change their programs in FP1 to ensure that they get at least one run on heavy fuel to better understand their ride height implications for the Grand Prix race weekend. Certainly very interesting to see what happened to Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton this Grand Prix race weekend. Certainly wasn't what we were expecting. It was certainly quite late after the Grand Prix. I think I'd already gone to bed, and then they announced the fact that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were eliminated from the Grand Prix. Certainly a big shock, but the rules are rules, as Toto Wolff has gone on and said, and unfortunately those two drivers were disqualified from the race. And unfortunately Lewis Hamilton went on to lose a podium position, which of course we're very upset about, because he was doing quite well in the race on Sunday. As we move on to an article speaking about how Mercedes I had another one here. How Mercedes moved closer to Red Bull with their new floor upgrades. Mercedes have struggled in 2023 ever since the rule... Mercedes have struggled in Formula 1 ever since the rule and regulation changes that were introduced in 2022. However, things seem to be going in the right direction at the US Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton managed to get the edge over both Ferrari and McLaren before being disqualified together with Leclerc for excessive wear on the skid plank. For Mercedes though, this disqualification is irrelevant in the long run because Lewis Hamilton has been able to close the gap on Max Verstappen. Despite the sprint weekend, which means that the teams have only an hour to set up the car, Mercedes brought a completely new floor. The new solution was characterized by new Venturi inlets, a revised floor edge, and also a different shape of the floor around the lower impact structure, which is allocated inside the floor of the car. It is possible to see all the changes highlighted with the blue arrows. The Venturi inlet has an entirely new shape compared to the previous version, with the distance between the floor edge and the two inside elements have been increased. This change was made to increase the amount of air being pushed underneath the car, and thus converted into downforce. This improves the car's behavior, especially in the high-speed corners. The floor edge has the same shape as the previous one though, but the race section has been inclined further, and the two vortex generators at its exit have changed too, with a more square space to better manage the incoming turbulence from the front tyres. This makes the flow underneath as undisturbed as possible, intending to generate a low pressure area. All these changes aim to increase the downforce generated under the car and increase the W14's rear stability in low speed corners. The floor also allowed the car to run at lower ride heights. The effects of this new package were visible and were very quick on the new Mercedes upgrades. The car has been very fast, especially with These effects of the new package were visibly very quick, and the car has been very fast, especially in the first sector, allowing Hamilton not only to fight for pole on both Friday and Saturday, but also to challenge Verstappen on the Sunday. The British driver, in fact, expressed his good impressions and praised the team's effort after the Friday qualifying, going on to say, I think it'll just be a showing of resilience and strength and depth from our team. I think we had a difficult year last year. Even to the start of this year, we didn't expect to be where we are. Things on the other side of the garage were quite different though, with George Russell, who struggled to find pace all weekend, finishing only P5 after Hamilton and Leclerc's disqualifications. Ferrari and McLaren both made similar choices for what concerned to be setup. In fact, the teams decided to use a medium downforce rear wing, which could have helped during qualifying since it proves higher top speeds and a good balance over one lap, but cost them in the race as the rear tyres suffered a lot. Despite the same choice, the MCL60 was still good in the race and in qualifying. It was a stable car in both high speed and in the slow speed hairpins, whereas the SF23 looked good in qualifying, but as they added more fuel, the car struggled a lot in making the tyres last. However, while Norris managed to bring the race home in P2 eventually, and Sainz got P3 for the Maranello team, Leclerc tried a one-stop race, which caused his decline down to P5. You certainly had to wonder what the Ferraris were doing on that race weekend, putting Leclerc out on a one-stop strategy. Really, I think they really did compromise his race by sending him out on a one-stop strategy, and unfortunately, he didn't have the degradation that they were hoping for. He wasn't necessarily being able to keep up with the drivers ahead of him. They were being able to overtake him. And then when he did come into the pits eventually, it was a little bit too late for him, unfortunately. But going back to Lewis Hamilton, he had a better race weekend. He was able to challenge for some of those top positions throughout the entire Grand Prix race weekend. Disappointing that he was disqualified for that floor being under the regulated amount that is tolerated. But at least we know that the Mercedes are slowly being able to improve on their pace, and hopefully next weekend out in Mexico, or rather this weekend out in Mexico, we should see a resurgent Mercedes, and I'm sure we will see a relatively hungry McLaren and a relatively hungry Lewis Hamilton to get on that podium position and to get another win in Formula 1. Moving over to another article saying the unknown legality of other Formula 1 cars in the US Grand Prix exposes an awkward reality. The disqualifications of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc from the US Grand Prix raised an uncomfortable thought: how many other Formula 1 cars were illegal but weren't caught? Hamilton's Mercedes and Leclerc's Ferrari were just 2 of 4 cars that went under a physical flaw and plank inspection check, whereas the others of Max Verstappen's race-winning Red Bull and McLaren's Lando Norris used let me carry on from the beginning again. Hamilton's Mercedes and Leclerc's Ferrari were just 2 of 4 cars to undergo physical flaw and plank wear inspection check. The others were Max Verstappen's race-winning Red Bull and McLaren's Lando Norris, who went on to finish 3rd. Both passed the checks, compared to Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, who didn't. But the remaining 16 cars, who knows whether they would have passed? They could all be legal and be illegal, or a mix of the two. The point is that we do not know. We don't know about the second Ferrari that inherited a podium because the disqualification of 2 cars did not mean that their respective sister cars had to be automatically checked as well. There's no guarantee that Carlos Sainz's Ferrari or George Russell's Mercedes would have been found to be illegal, as setups can be slightly different between cars, as different approaches from drivers to curb usage, for example, can mean that all important few tenths of a millimeter difference in plank wear by the end of the Grand Prix could make all that difference. And we don't know whether any of the other cars that scored points in this race broke the plank rules either, or any cars outside the top 10 either. In fact, checking the floor and plank isn't always on the to-do list, at least based on what the FIA discloses. There appears to have been no plank checks carried out at the Qatar or Japan Grand Prix, for example, and none at some other races earlier in the season. The last physical floor and plank wear inspections appear to have been carried out post-race before the US Grand Prix was in Singapore, on Verstappen's Red Bull and Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin. This is presumably because of the risk of plank wear was perceived to be a lot lower at the intervening races. This ties in with the FIA being able to target problem areas when it sees fit. And as the disqualified teams acknowledged in Austin, the nature of the circuit and the sprint race weekend format clearly created the potential for some plank trouble, which makes it likely that the officials specifically wanted to check the leading cars for compliance. But the selective scrutineering process means that there could be other cars further down the grid who have got away with it simply because they were not checked. The FIA has access to a vast amount of data, including last year's new aerodynamic oscillation metric. Maybe this guides the officials onto where to look, but even if so, it's only a clue of where to look. It provides nothing in itself. And that is the point. The FIA has good reason to want to check some of the leading cars, and found that 2 of them were illegal. It is not a grand leap to think of some of the other 16 might have failed the same checks too, so why not be sure? It is important to note that it is, to a degree, just a frustrating reality that we have to accept. While the FIA's post-race scrutineering checks are extensive, they are not, and they cannot, be all-encompassing, nor should they be. Some stuff simply does not merit every part of every car being checked. Short of keeping hold of the cars for days after the race, a degree of discretion has to be applied. For example, every car is weighed for obvious reasons, just like every car has its starting tyres checked. But in Austin, only the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, Lando Norris's McLaren, and the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda were subjected to a battery of surface aerodynamic components and bodywork tests, just like the floor edges and front and rear wings. There are then much more extensive checks of one car, genuinely picked at random afterwards. Streamlining scrutineering is a necessary practicality, and there's also an argument for not telegraphing to teams what is being checked when and when. Otherwise, someone will eventually try to game the system and take a chance at a race where the technical rule X will not be checked. But many might assume that plank wear, given the implications it has for how low cars can run, falls under the category of should always be assessed, and what happened in Austin may well serve as a new example of how scrutineering will evolve for the future. Certainly it was an interesting Grand Prix race weekend, and we have been speaking a lot about these flaws on these Formula 1 cars, and I will be making an in-depth analysis of what happened in the Austin Grand Prix. But we have to think, do we need more consistent checks from the FIA throughout every race car? Of course it is. Unfortunately, not necessarily possible to do because there are 20 cars and you can't necessarily have every single FIA delegate going onto every single Formula 1 car and having to check it. It is just going to take too long, unfortunately, and they need to move these cars to the next Grand Prix race weekend, which, of course, could come one race after the other, like this weekend, where we're moving straight away to Mexico. I see we have a couple comments there in the comment section. Mark saying hello and saying, cannot believe Hamilton and Leclerc got disqualified. Surely if both got disqualified, every single car should have been checked. Yes, I surely agree with that. As we move on to another Formula 1 technical analysis. Looking at Alonso's car and why the upgrade risk did not why the upgrades risk was not the reason behind Aston Martin's Grand Prix slump in Austin. The team has suffered a poor weekend with both cars out of the points in the sprint and near the back of the Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso feels, though, that Aston Martin was right to bring its big upgrade to the US Grand Prix, despite the risk of it being a sprint race weekend. When the alternate Formula 1 format is in use, drivers and teams have only a single 60-minute practice session to set their cars up before they enter Parc Fermé. Major setup changes are then banned for the remainder of the weekend, making it important to hit the ground running in the practice session with two-thirds less time available to evaluate new parts, as in a normal Grand Prix race weekend. It is for this reason that some teams do not bring big upgrades to sprint races, as a bad practice can have major ramifications for the rest of the weekend. Aston Martin went on to bring a big package to Austin, but brake issues limited the team's running in the sole practice. With both cars out in Q1 and qualifying, there was a non-score in the sprint for them as well. Despite the upgrade risk, Alonso is sure that this is not the heart of the problems with the AMR23. The frustration was not really increasing in the race because we'd been on the same page the whole weekend, said Alonso. We were uncompetitive in FP1, in qualifying and in the sprint. The car has been in parc ferme since FP1, and maybe we were not optimized in terms of setup. We want to think that with more free practice time, you would have had the time to test many different combinations of setups and different ways of optimizing the new package. It was also a bit risky to bring the upgrades here on the sprint race weekend, as you rely so much on a perfect FP1, with two cars doing different testing between the two. We had a very chaotic FP1, and since then we have been on the back foot, he said. It is not like the previous package, which was fast enough to guarantee places in the top 10. We have been struggling for months, and the whole factory is working flat out the whole factory had been delivering flat out to deliver this package for Austin. You cannot say though at the last moment, okay, we will wait for Mexico, because everyone was working day and night to bring these new parts. The biggest problem that we had though was in FP1 the biggest problem we had was many issues in FP1 that we will need to address. I wish to go on to the Mexican Grand Prix soon, where we will have 3 free practice sessions to test many things on the car and hopefully find more pace and be more competitive. It was unfortunately a painful weekend. Certainly was a very painful weekend for Fernando Alonso, where he didn't have the greatest finish there. I think he even had to retire from the race, if I was not mistaken. Just looking at the standings. That is unfortunately the entire weekend standings. Let me look at the race results here. Fernando Alonso, yes, did DNF, unfortunately, because he was putting up with some, I think, still brake issues on his car. Very disappointing, but at least his teammate Lance Stroll was able to get that Aston Martin a little bit higher up the grid than we would have expected. He got up into P7 at the end of the race with that two-place grid jump because of the disqualifications from Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. Yep, disappointing weekend for Aston Martin. Hopefully they'll be able to hit the ground running in Mexico this next weekend out. As we move on to another article speaking about Lando Norris, who has hailed McLaren's progress after a 4th straight podium, but conceded that they did not have enough to win the US Grand Prix. Lando Norris went on to say that McLaren are making great progress, but did not have enough to win this weekend's US Grand Prix, after the Briton came 3rd, later promoted to P2 after Lewis Hamilton's DQ. Lando Norris made a great getaway from 2nd and got ahead of the pole sitter Charles Leclerc to take the lead on the opening lap of the race. He led for the majority of the first half, before eventually race winner Max Verstappen breezed past him. The McLaren driver, though, looked to be hanging on to 3-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, but lost ground as the race wore on, before Lewis Hamilton, on a fresh set of medium tyres, came racing past for 2nd place. Norris, though, was able to hold on to 3rd, his 4th podium in a row now, but was later promoted to 2nd following Hamilton's disqualification. He went on to say, "But I'm happy. It was a good race from my side. We knew our struggles, and we knew what was going to be difficult today. And it was just degradation." But the pace over the first 10 laps of every stint, the pace in the beginning, was very strong. I just couldn't hold on though long enough. We are getting there though. Progress every race weekend. Just some more steps are needed. Norris put up a staunch defence to try and keep Hamilton behind when the two went wheel to wheel late in the affair. When asked about the battle with his compatriot, Norris went on to say, I mean, I had to try right, but I just couldn't do it. I didn't have enough tyres left at the end. You saw how quickly he pulled away. I also had to look after my own race. I did the best that I could. I had to push and look after the tyres, and it was too difficult today. Maybe if it was a cooler track, it would have been more suited to us. But it wasn't. I'm still happy though. The team have done an excellent job. To finish on the podium here was better than we were expecting coming into the race weekend, so I am very happy. His teammate Oscar Piastri had an eventful start to the outing in Austin, as he started 10th but made his way up into 6th after the first lap. However, on his way up the field, he collided with the Alpine of Esteban Ocon at turn 2. Ocon went on to retire a few laps later with terminal damage from the incident, while McLaren called Piastri in not too long after to park after his radiator harmed McLaren MCL60 was unable to finish the Grand Prix. However, speaking after jumping out of the cockpit, the Australian could not confirm what caused the issue. I just went round the outside, said Piastri as he explained what happened at the start. I don't know if Ocon was had a bit of a moment on the bump or whatever, but just a bit of a contact on the exit, and I think it must have broken one of the radiators, or maybe it was just an isolated issue. I'm not sure, but something on the right side of the car broke. After scoring 2 consecutive podiums in Japan and Qatar, as well as a sprint race victory in Lusail, Piastri endured a difficult weekend, as he failed to score a point across the sprint and the race. Reflecting on the weekend as a whole, he went on to say, "Definitely not one of my best weekends. I think the sprint was clearly not very strong. I think today, though, was looking a fair bit better. But some things to try and work and improve. I think I was improving throughout the race weekend. I think around here it is also very tricky to get it all together. So, character building weekend, but these are the things and the kind of weekends that are very important in my first season. So definitely we will try and learn what I can." Great to see though that the McLarens are being able to challenge consistently for the top of the grid. We've certainly hoped that they will be able to hit the ground running again next season and be able to challenge from the first race on to the end of the season. It is going to become a major battle of the upgrades next season. We're going to have to wait and see who is going to start the season on the top foot, and then we're going to have to see who is going to be able to continuously keep up consistently in terms of their development for next year. Looking at our poll that was put up here before the beginning of this live stream, I went on to ask who was your standout driver from the US Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton with 62%, Max Verstappen with 25%, Albon with no percent, and other with 12%. Do be sure to let us know in the comment section if you did vote for other. As we move on to our final article here today, Verstappen went on to send a message to the booing fans after a hostile podium welcome. The Dutchman was met with a chorus of boos after securing the US Grand Prix victory. Max Verstappen has welcomed the hostile reception though from fans at the Circuit of the Americas after his victory in the US Grand Prix. The Dutchman secured his 50th Formula 1 race win by holding off a late charge from Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton in what was a thrilling strategic battle in Austin. Verstappen, whose dominance over the rest of the field has meant that his driver's title was wrapped up at the previous race in Qatar, was met with boos while completing his Parc Ferme interview with 2009 champion Jenson Button. Speculation on social media has suggested that some of the booing was directed towards Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, though. The persistence throughout the time in which Verstappen made his way from the car to podium demonstrated vitriol was directed towards him. Hamilton, in contrast, was cheered throughout the race weekend, and with 2021 rivalry between the two creating a partisan atmosphere at the various races since that season, both drivers have been targeted in the past. Another factor of Verstappen at COTA was the large presence of a Mexican fan base, turning out in support of his teammate Sergio Perez. With their relationship having been fractured over the season, you have to think that could be a contributing factor. Max Verstappen went on to say though, and ask if he was annoyed, he went on to say, no. In the end, I'm the one that takes the silverware home, so it is all fine by me. Formula 1 moves on to the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend, with a similar situation likely to arise. If you expected a more hostile reception at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, Verstappen insisted that it is still me who will be bringing home the silverware. So Verstappen's still confident that despite all the boos from the Formula 1 fans, he still thinks that he does not care, and he is all too happy to be taking home all that silverware from these race weekends. Certainly, you have to think Max Verstappen doesn't really care. He is in the absolute peak of his Formula 1 career at the moment, and is doing phenomenally right now in his Formula 1 career. But that is it from me here today on Forever Motorsport. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for voting in the comment section, for voting in that poll, for letting us know all of your opinions on the comment section. Do be sure to check out all of our other stats content on the channel, and do be sure to join me for tomorrow's live video here on the same place at the same time. Hello and welcome to Forever Sports. My name is Reece. I'll be talking to you a little bit today about one of our channel partners, BITDEFENDER. BITDEFENDER is a global leader in cyber security. BITDEFENDER is committed to defending people all around the globe against cyber attacks, as well as to transform people's digital experiences. In the next 6 months, Forever Sports will be covering major tournaments such as the Rugby Championship, the Premier League, the remainder of the Formula 1 season, as well as embarking on the biggest Rugby World Cup YouTube campaign ever. To ensure that these are all a success, it is imperative that the Forever Sports channels and platforms remain uncompromised. And with BITDEFENDER, we can be assured that our cybersecurity needs are being taken care of. To read more on BITDEFENDER, please be sure to check the links in the description of our video. Once again, thank you very much to our partner, BITDEFENDER, for joining the channel. I've been Reece here on Forever Sports. Thank you very much. How did Mercedes and Ferrari fall foul of Formula 1's plank rules? Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's post-race disqualification at the US Grand Prix was the first time in years that cars have fallen foul of Formula 1's plank rules. In fact, there have been remarkably few times in Formula 1's history that planks have been found to have worn down too much, with the most famous still being Michael Schumacher's disqualification from the '94 Belgian Grand Prix. This makes it even more intriguing that in an area of the car that teams are very mindful of, there being no room for error, two of the top squads tripped up on the same race weekend. The explanations of how the rule breaches happened seem to be clear, which is why both teams had to simply accept their fate with the stewards. As Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff said, there's no wiggle room in the rules. We need to take it on the chin, do the learning, and come back stronger. The tolerance between success and failure over plank legality is tiny. Given that there can be no more than 1mm of wear between a freshly fitted plank and one that's gone through all the rigors of a race, to check compliance within the rules, the FIA is able to measure wear on the plank at 4 50mm diameter holes drilled into the surface at specific locations designated within the regulations. In the instance of Leclerc and Hamilton, it was the rearmost hole that failed their tests. This is an area that the FIA has been closely monitoring with the new generation of cars, and it has served several technical directives as a response to inconsistencies in their design already. One interesting discussion point after disqualifications was that the FIA did not check the planks of all the other cars on the grid. This is standard procedure though, as it would be impossible for the governing body to check compliance of every aspect of every car. It is why it selects random elements every time from random cars at the pit to check compliance throughout the grid. On this occasion, Max Verstappen's RB19, Charles Leclerc's FF23, and Lewis Hamilton's W14, alongside Lando Norris's MCL60, were all chosen to have their planks checked. The Red Bull and McLaren were given the all clear, whereas the Ferrari and Mercedes were not. The technical reason for why their planks were worn down too much is simple to explain. Their cars were running too low to the ground throughout the Grand Prix race weekend. The cause of this revolves around the choice of ride height, something that teams play around over each weekend. But it can also be influenced by fuel loads and even DRS use, as the aero load comes on and off the car. Teams normally have plenty of time in a Grand Prix weekend to get their ride height into a sweet spot where the plank is not in danger of being worn away, but the car is low enough to deliver maximum performance. However, this balance has proved harder to manage at sprint races, with teams just having one practice session to get their car dialed in for the entire race weekend. As a consequence of the more condensed timetable, there is an inability to cover the qualifying and long-run programs that are regularly done. Any ride height calculations made during this FP1 session must account for the additional competitive running that is added into the weekend schedule, as there are extra competitive sessions taking place once the cars are locked in. Furthermore, teams are not able to change the plank as freely as they normally are once the cars are in parc fermé, so there is a certain element of guesswork going on. We have already seen times this year, like with Alpine and Baku, where teams have realised after the sprint that the ride heights were too low, and that there was a risk of the plank being worn too much in the main race. Cars have then been pulled out of parc fermé to make the ride height changes and started from the pit lane. Ferrari revealed after the race that it had spent time during its FP1 racing the ride height of its cars, in order to find an optimum range for the race weekend, once it became clear how bumpy the track was. But it clearly did not raise the ride height enough. Intriguingly, it also suggested that the weather may have played a factor in how things played out. A stronger wind intensity that was originally forecast along with the change in direction perhaps meant that the car was being forced down further in areas of the track that it had in practice. pushing the plank on the ground. The situation though at Austin was also made more complicated by the bumpy nature of the circuit, which was described by Verstappen as not being up to Formula 1 standards. Another potential factor would also be related to the tyres, as it may not be a coincidence that 2 cars that fell foul of the plank issues were also those that ran extended opening stints. We know that as the tyres wear, there's less tread left, which not only reduces grip, but means that the temperature is also able to escape. This can result in lower pressures as tyres get towards the end of their life, and that has the consequence of a lower ride height. In both Hamilton and Leclerc's case, they ran longer first stints on the medium tyre in order to create a strategic offset to Verstappen and Norris, with Leclerc opting to make a one-stop strategy work against his rivals on 2 stoppers. This could have opened the door for an extra plank wear in this period of the race, when the car was still quite heavy on fuel. All these above elements came together to push the Mercedes and the Ferrari outside of the tolerated window. As Mercedes trackside engineer director Andrew Chauvelin explained, unfortunately, it is one of the pitfalls of the sprint format, where we have a solitary hour of running before Parc Fermé. Without running at a full race fuel load in FP1, combined with a circuit as bumpy as this in parts of the track where the drivers have to put the car during the bumpy Grand Prix, have contributed to the higher than expected wear levels. We will go away from this weekend and learn from this though. It will be very interesting to see if at bumpy sprint venues, with Interlagos coming up, teams will now change their programs in FP1 to ensure that they get at least one run on heavy fuel to better understand their ride height implications for the Grand Prix race weekend. Certainly very interesting to see what happened to Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton this Grand Prix race weekend. Certainly wasn't what we were expecting. It was quite late after the Grand Prix. I think I'd already gone to bed, and then they announced the fact that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were eliminated from the Grand Prix. Yeah, big shock, but the rules are rules, as Toto Wolff has gone on and said, and unfortunately those 2 drivers were disqualified from the race. Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports, here for some breaking news. Huge concerns have been raised in the Andretti negotiations with Formula 1. For several weeks now, speculations have surrounded Andretti and General Motors and their entry into Formula 1. Having passed the necessary checks and requirements imposed by the FIA, talks have now begun with the American entrant and Formula 1 management. Generally speaking, Andretti has faced sustained opposition from the existing teams. For almost 2 years, team principals have questioned whether an 11th team is necessarily in Formula 1. Moreover, the issue of added value is often asked when discussing Andretti's bid. In a sport where politics is so pivotal, the environment towards the American group has been very hostile. There is no set deadline for when Formula 1 must reach a decision on whether to accept or to deny their application, adding further uncertainty to their process. Financial issues are also cited as a significant sticking point. On paper, Formula 1 is in the healthiest it has ever been financially. The budget cap has also seen the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull go from spending $400 million annually to around $150 million. As such, it is inaccurate to suggest that Andretti's entry would jeopardize any existing team. Unfortunately for the US outfit, this doesn't stop teams from complaining about prize money. The reduced slice of prize money teams will receive if Andretti joins is another area teams often cite as an issue. While the current teams have no formal say on what Formula 1 management's final decision will be, their resistance will likely be a key factor in swaying CEO Stefano Domenicali's final opinion on the matter. And critical to the negativity towards Andretti is the fear for some teams that adding an 11th squad to the grid could risk their own future. Williams team principal James Vowles made it clear at the recent Qatar Grand Prix that squads like his were still on the knife edge when it came to finances, so losing prize money and value would not be a good thing. My responsibility is to 900 employees within my company, he said. If you go look at Company's House, you can go look it up for Williams. We've submitted it now, and you can see that we're lossy. Very lossy. In fact, compare it to 21 to 22, you'll see that losses are in the tens of millions. Compare that to 2023, which you won't see, but I'll guarantee you that it is multiples above that. As Red Bull team boss Christian Horner told Sky Formula 1 recently, I think that when you look at how Audi has come into the sport, they've acquired an existing team and an existing franchise. Should it be different for the others? I think that's where Liberty and the FIA need to get together and come to us with a collective position. Because you cannot have one rule for one and another for others. Obviously, money makes the world go round, and that's what every team will be acutely sensitive of, and the franchise value being diluted. Suddenly you go from 10 to 11, So of course the stakeholders, the shareholders of each individual team, will have a concern about that. The key thing for Andretti is whether those concerns are enough to convince Formula 1 management not to give it the deal that it wants. But would Andretti's arrival and the subsequent reshuffling of the commercial rights income really have that much of an impact in making things worse? Especially if it stumps up the $200 million dilution fund payment first. Formula 1's exact prize money split is secret, with its details enshrined in the commercial element of the two Concord agreements. However, using information that is available in the public domain, including the published accounts of both teams and Formula 1 owners Liberty Media, it is possible to ascertain a pretty good idea of how the commercial pot is split up. The best estimation is that, according to the terms of the Concord Agreement, if we judge that the final payment pot is $1 billion, here is how the payments would shift with an 11th team being brought on the grid. If we had 10 teams on the grid with a total fund of $1 billion, the top team would get $140 million with 14%, second place would get 131, third place 122, fourth 113, fifth 104, sixth 95 million, 7th 87 million, 8th 78 million, 9th 69 million, and 10th $60 million with 6% of that prize pool. Should an 11th team arrive, then the figures would shift slightly, with everyone's percentage of the pot being reduced. This means that those who got a bigger slice of the pie will stand to lose the most. The projection for 11 teams based on $1 billion are as follows. For first place, they would then get 13.3% of that prize pool and get $133 million, down $7 million from $140 million, with only 10 teams on the grid. Second place would then receive $125 million, third 116, fourth 108, fifth 99, sixth 91, seventh 83, eighth 74, ninth 65, 10th 57, and 11th being $49 million. Comparing the two tables, it shows that the arrival of Andretti, if the prize pot does not increase, would trigger a $7 million loss for the Constructors' Champions. The team that finished 5th would lose $5 million, while the team that was placed 10th would go from $60 million to $57 million, a drop of $3 million per year. However, there have been some positive developments for Andretti. Despite the opposition among existing teams, it is ultimately the decision of Formula 1 to accept or deny them. In this sense, the above grievances are not necessarily detrimental to their aspirations. Additionally, there are legal implications of the decision Formula 1 takes. Simply put, Andretti has the option to take legal action if Formula 1 management do not accept their entry for 2025. Of course, this is not an ideal path for any party that is involved. Still, it gives the American team an ace up their sleeve. If the sport wants to avoid the public backlash and scrutiny that a legal case would involve, reaching some kind of compromise should be their priority. New information has emerged though that sheds some light on the dynamics at play between Formula 1 management and Andretti Motors. According to sources, Formula 1 has asked General Motors if they would like to partner with a team other than Andretti. This would be a direct snub from the Formula 1 management to the American team, underscoring their resistance to an 11th team joining the grid. If Formula 1 has indeed asked General Motors to join the field, but with another team, then it cannot be said that Andretti is not adding value to the grid. At this stage, the outcome of negotiations is uncertain, and it is entirely possible an agreement will be reached within the next few months. Andretti is operating under the assumption that they will be in Formula 1, as they have already built a car according to the 2023 speculations, and they are already testing it in their wind tunnel in Germany. Regrettably, however, it seems that Formula 1 is still very resistant to Andretti joining the field, and there is the potential for the saga to become more drawn out and grossly unpopular. Formula 1 must tread carefully though if they are to avoid another bad PR episode for the sport. Certainly very interesting to hear all of these key points that are the sticking points in Andretti's entry into Formula 1. Will they be granted that entry into the sport, or will there be these sticking points that hold it back from moving on to an agreement with Formula 1 management? We certainly hope that it does not go a legal route to get them onto the grid in 2025 or 2026, but if they do not get their bid accepted by Formula 1 management, that may be the only avenue that Andretti does have to get their team onto the grid in 2025 or 2026. Thank you very much for watching me. I've been Reece here on Forever Motorsports. Do be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to check out all of our other content on our channel for more Formula 1 news. That has been it for me here on Forever Motorsports. Cheers. Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports for this, a helmet review ahead of the Mexican Grand Prix. We have two drivers this race weekend who are bringing new helmets onto the track. That is Sergio Perez and Oliver Bearman. Oliver Bearman making his FP1 debut in Formula 1 this weekend with Haas. But to speak about the home driver first, Sergio Perez will start his home Grand Prix in Mexico with a specially designed helmet. The Red Bull Racing driver has had a helmet designed by a fan in a competition alongside Red Bull. Thousands of designs were sent in after Sergio Perez gave his fans the chance to have their say on how his helmet looked for the Mexican Grand Prix. The 33-year-old driver is racing in his own country and wants to make it a special moment. Out of the thousands of designs submitted, Perez finally chose the design by 22-year-old Mexican Carla Lozano. He went on and said, "When I saw Carla's design, I knew I had to have it on my helmet for Mexico. It is great that the team can connect with fans in the way that we do here and give them the opportunities like this." It was tricky making the decision because the entries were so strong and interesting. Perez let it be noted that Carla's art was the one that brought it all together and showed Mexico in such a perfect way. There are so many little details and the colors are amazing. I always have Mexico in La Cabeza, but this weekend I will be proudly showing it with this unique helmet. I don't think the pit lane has seen a helmet like this before, he added. Looking at Sergio Perez's helmet for this race weekend, it is really quite exciting. It's got all the really bright and colorful Mexican colors on there and all of the Mexican designs as well. Certainly ties into his home race and it's going to be very noticeable from the cockpit. Of course, perfect for the Mexican fans out there in force, I'm sure, at this Mexican Grand Prix. They're going to be able to see their driver coming from a mile away. But to look at the other driver currently running a helmet design for this race weekend is Oliver Bearman, who will be making his FP1 debut with Haas. He has released a new helmet for himself on Instagram. He says, "New colors for Mexico, so happy with how this came out. Hope you like it as much as I do." It is a pretty standard looking Haas designed helmet in black, white and fluorescent green with of course all of the Haas designs and Haas sponsors on there as well as the Ferrari Driver Academy logo, because that is who Oliver Bearman does drive for at the moment in Formula 2. He should be making his way into Formula 1 in the next couple of years. But really exciting to see all of these drivers running unique helmets for this upcoming Grand Prix race weekend. Not many drivers running new helmets for this race weekend. Hopefully we'll see a few more before the end of the season that we can do a review for you guys. But certainly really looking forward to seeing that helmet of Sergio Perez's out on track. It's going to be very, very bright and it's not going to be very hard to miss him out there. Do be sure to join us for all of our coverage for this Mexican Grand Prix race weekend, and thank you very much for watching this video. Do be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. I've been Reece here on Forever Motorsports. Cheers.
Hello everybody, Stevie P here from Forever Sports, and I'm here to tell you about BOYLESPORTS, the official betting partner of Forever Sports. Across all of our channels, they are one of the leading betting companies in the world and have recently launched in South Africa with an amazing offering. You can get a 1,000 Rand welcome offer. For the rugby, they are giving you 25% payout boost up to 2,000 Rand on the Springboks winning the World Cup, as well as an extra 50 Rand bet when you stake 250 more on rugby during the Rugby World Cup. It is your one-stop betting shop. That is BOYLESPORTS. Come and join us in the community. Check the links in the description to sign up, get yourself an account, and make sure that you are winning big with BOYLESPORTS.
has been analysed, we will decide whether to approve this version for use in 2024, said a Pirelli spokesperson. During the race, graining is a fairly frequent phenomenon on this track. This is partly because the tyres are subjected to greater slipping, as well as Hermanos Rodriguez, home of the Mexico City Grand Prix. The inaugural race around the circuit was won by Jim Clark in 1963, while the most successful driver around the circuit has been Max Verstappen, who has gone on to take the winner's trophy home 4 times. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez is a high-speed street circuit spanning 4.3 kilometers. This tricky street circuit is made up of 17 corners and 3 DRS zones, 2 of them being consecutive DRS straights, which should provide great overtaking opportunities on Sunday. The current lap record around the circuit is 1 minute 18.7 seconds, which was set by Valtteri Bottas in 2018. At over 2,200 meters above sea level, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez has an altitude of over 1,400 meters higher than the second highest Formula 1 track on the calendar, being the Interlagos circuit in Brazil. At higher altitudes, the air becomes thinner, and this reduction in air density makes setting up the cars for the Mexican Grand Prix one of the most unique challenges on the calendar. Dave Robson, the head of vehicle performance at Williams, went on to say that the low pressure means that despite running large rear wings, the drag and downforce of the cars is still low, as well as cooling the power unit and the brakes is also very difficult around the circuit. The turbo also needs to work very hard to keep the internal combustion engine running correctly. As part of a requirement for each team to run a rookie on 2 occasions during the season, Mercedes, Alpine, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo and Haas will all give track time to promising young talents this weekend. Danish Formula 2 driver Frederik Vesti will make his F1 debut for Mercedes and get a chance to show what he can do in modern machinery, taking over the seat from George Russell. At Alpine, Jack Doohan drove here a year ago and will do so again this time around, while Red Bull Junior driver Isak Hadjar makes his first appearance for AlphaTauri. The Alfa Romeo reserve driver Teo Porcher will be getting a go in Valtteri Bottas' car around the Mexican circuit, and Ollie Behrman is also getting his first taste of an F1 weekend when he goes on to drive for Haas. This Formula 1 circuit provides some of the best viewing experiences for Formula 1 fans, especially in the Foroso grandstand, which is set up in an old baseball stadium, where you not only get to experience the thrill of watching an F1 car navigating a tricky technical sector, but you also get to experience the podium celebrations, which take place within view of the Mexican fans. Watch now as you get taken around a lap of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Let us know in the comment section who you are supporting for the Mexico Grand Prix, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We sure hope to see you during our coverage of the Mexico Grand Prix.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Forever Motorsports. Here, you're joined by Mark and Reece, of course, myself being Mark, Reece being next to me. And we're here for free practice 2, which is going to get going in just about 9 minutes' time. Of course, we had free practice 1 already, Max Verstappen topping that. But, Alex Albon doing exceptionally well to get very, very close to the top there in second position after FP1.
Yes, he certainly really pushed his car to the max in that session and got all the way up alongside Max Verstappen in P2. Certainly not where we expected him to be, but really quite excited for the prospect of what that could give us the rest of this race weekend. It's going to be exciting to see if they're going to be competitive enough to stay competitive throughout the rest of this race weekend. Of course, that's going to be quite difficult once the rest of the teams start to ramp up their pace, with the likes of Mercedes obviously starting to do that in this session. Normally they spend their first session doing quite a lot of race sims and just getting the car to the best setup that it can be, especially with all their new upgrades that they've got on it from last race weekend that they're still trying to learn at the moment.
Yeah, so Mercedes engines seem to be going relatively all right. McLaren did quite well in the first session. Mercedes, of course, did a lot of testing with regards to race simulation. Williams did very well in terms of Alex Albon coming right up there in second. There was a lot of rookies in that first session, of course, which will not be featuring in this next session. Very disappointing, of course, for
Teo Porcher,
yeah,
was unfortunately not able to get any hot laps done in that session due to the fact that his car had brake issues throughout the entirety of the session, unfortunately.
Yeah, so he was unable to participate in it, which is very much a shame because, of course, he is leading F2 at the moment. He is currently the best F2 driver, well on his way to become F2 Drivers' Champion. And was unable to participate in today's F1 Practice 1. But all of our regulars will be back in their cars for FP2, so that includes George Russell, it includes Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda,
Pierre Gasly,
Pierre Gasly, as well, of course, as...
I think that's all.
No, there's one more I'm missing. But anyway, nonetheless, we'll obviously continue with our normal drivers for this next session. And everybody joining us in the stream, welcome, welcome, welcome. Be sure to hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from, what you think is going to happen in this session. Be sure to go participate in that poll. Who was your surprise driver in FP1? And of course, we'll get a new poll going up just as the session starts as to who you think will top FP2.
Yes, certainly looking forward to this second free practice session. While the drivers get to grips with their cars around the circuit, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, I've gotten quite good at saying that now after doing the track guide, but it is quite a tricky track, of course, with that run into turn 1 and 2 being a very heavy braking zone. Of course, the track also being really high up in altitude, 2,224 meters to be exact, 1,500 meters higher than the Interlagos circuit in Brazil, which is the second highest circuit on the Formula 1 calendar. Of course, Mexico City also being one of the highest capitals or capital cities in the world.
Yeah, so it's going to be quite tough on some of these drivers. There's going to be very different conditions that we have for
Tough on the
tyres.
cars as well.
Yeah, so as I said, the engines will be suffering. Ferrari, of course, we're keeping an eye on, a close eye on. Sainz had a few problems in the first session. Leclerc had a small problem, but sorted that out very, very quickly. But we're going to be watching them with a close eye because, of course, they've not opted to change their engines for this weekend, and we reckon those engines are on their very last legs.
One driver that we are hearing is going to take an engine change this weekend is the likes of Yuki Tsunoda, who will be taking that engine change. And because of that, and due to the fact that it is out of his normal allocation, he is going to be starting the race on Sunday from the back of the grid.
Yes, so of course, pretty much qualifying tomorrow for him will be all but an exercise.
Practice session 4.
Yeah, essentially. So he's not going to really stress too much with regards to what happens in qualifying tomorrow. Just make sure that he keeps the car out of any danger. So yeah, we've got Percy joining us here saying, let's go, hello, hello. And we've also got Cora joining us once again saying, good evening. It's way too late in France right now. This weekend is going to be difficult. Well, you know, the thing is, South Africa and France, they share the same time zone.
Yes.
We are in the same boat.
Tired, yeah. If you didn't see me just have a big bit of a yawn there, I do apologize. It is almost midnight here in South Africa.
Yeah, indeed. So we're not sure how many of the regulars we are going to get. It's quite a late race here, of course, because it's on the other side.
Late practice session, right?
Well, it's a late race. I'm saying the whole weekend is going to be late. because we are off in Mexico, of course. After Mexico, we will have Brazil, and after Brazil, we will go to Las Vegas for the first time. Very keen to see what's happening there.
4 weeks of late nights, and then we return to Abu Dhabi for the finale of the Formula 1 2023 season, which certainly should be quite an interesting track to go back to. It's always been quite an exciting track for me, and Percy going on to say we're all suffering together. Yes, we certainly are, but I think suffering for a good cause. We all enjoy watching Formula 1 as we're seeing the views over this circuit, the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, the 20th round of the 2023 Formula 1 calendar. And just looking at some stats ahead of this practice session, going over first the Pirelli compounds that are being brought into this race weekend is the C5, the C4 and the C3 compound for this race weekend, as well as we had a prototype tire in that first practice session. Looking at all of these stats now, the track distance is 4.3 kilometers, with full throttle being spent at about 48% of the circuit, top speed being 356.9 kilometers an hour, with 17 turns and an elevation of only 2.6 meters. Of course, this track is set up really high up in terms of elevation. Above sea level, it's 2,224 meters above sea level, which makes it really quite difficult for the teams to get the most optimum setup in terms of top speed, as well as getting that downforce for those really tricky technical sectors in the middle and final sector.
Yeah, the weather conditions here for the second practice session, 26 degrees, so it's actually slightly hotter than it was earlier, but the track temperature is ever so slightly down from what it was in FP1. Humidity is also significantly down from 51% to 30%, and the wind has died down also, even though it wasn't that strong in FP1. So, less humidity, it should be less stringent on those drivers as a result. It is later on in the day, of course, so it will be a slightly cooler, supposedly, even though the temperatures say it's hot right now. It should cool down ever so slightly throughout the rest of the session. But all the drivers will probably not feel that all that much. They'll have the roaring engines right behind them on their back. And it will be very hot in those cars, I'm sure. As we see a very full crowd here gathered, ready for this FP2 session, which gets going in just under about 3 minutes' time. 2 minutes' time now, actually, in fact.
Quite dark clouds actually heading over the track at the moment, Mark.
Yeah, so it's a little cloudy.
Hopefully that might, I mean, they look quite dark, that they might have rain in them, but hopefully that doesn't interrupt the session. It's not as humid out there as it was in the first session, so we wouldn't really expect rain, as we're seeing some Mexican fans really excited to be on the F1 screens, as a lot more people start to join in the stream now. Do be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're hoping to get to 2,000 subs before the end of the day. We are really quite close, as we're watching Max Verstappen looking on as we wait for this practice session to get underway. Yeah, just a few minutes left.
Of course, he is driver's champion, and his teammate rather, who sits in second position, Perez, of course, is a home race. He's on 240 points. Hamilton not too far behind on 201. Alonso still up there on 183. As a result of Hamilton's disqualification, of course, didn't get any points. So Alonso's still there and thereabouts for that third place / second place fight. Mercedes are second in the Constructors' Championship, 344 points. Ferrari right on their tails at 322, but McLaren also roaring up in the last few races. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do enough, though, to get ahead of those Ferraris or those Mercedes before the end of the season. Of course, Red Bull and Max Verstappen winning both the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship already.
George Russell sat back in his car for this free practice session, of course, after I think it was Frederick Vesti took over his seat in that first practice session. George Russell will now have this session and tomorrow's session in the morning, well, I think morning time in Mexico, and then, yeah, he gets on to qualifying. What can Yuki Tsunoda do? He also gets into this car, or his car, for the first time in this session. We saw a bit of a replay and had a bit of a chuckle during the two sessions, Mark, of the engineers trying to change out a tire on that AlphaTauri, and just giving possibly the Ferrari strategists and mechanics some inspiration for what they can do during the weekend to further improve Ferrari's woes.
Well, obviously, just to continue Ferrari's woes, and otherwise they're really poor management of the team, I suppose. Of course, so, the replay we're talking about is the fact that in the garage they came in for a pit stop practice and happened to have the tire the wrong way around. So in attempting to put the tyre on, they kept brushing it straight up against the rim, going against the car against her. wonder why it's not working, then realizing the car's the wrong way around. As we do now have the start.
Tyre's the wrong
Tyre's
way
the
around.
wrong way around, but
That
not
would
the
be
car, yes.
interesting if
The
car
tyre was the wrong way around. As we do have the start of FP2.
Pretty much everyone making their way out onto circuits at the moment. We have, it's still saying Jack doing, but it should fix that up relatively soon, I hope. But that should then be one of the Alpines, I think.
Jack Gasly.
Yeah, Pierre Gasly. As we're watching Sergio Perez, the home driver, going out onto circuit, we're seeing once again these test Pirelli tyres being used in the session. Sergio Perez going out on a fresh set of those at the moment. Of course, we don't know exactly what those tyres are, but I think from the lap times you can kind of try and deduce what they are. Interesting to see what Pirelli are doing, at least this race weekend, where I think the tyre wear isn't all that high, so it should be quite interesting in terms of what people do on strategy on Sunday.
Indeed, so we've got TC joining us here, and Percy, of course, saying we're all 7 together already. TC just joining us and saying, hoping Lewis will move up the timing board in FP2. Well, I think we will see a little bit more of Merck's pace this time round. Percy also saying that they've been inspired, and they're now working on a little crochet F1 logo. We'll go and make our logo, please. That would be really, really fun. That would be really, really nice. It'd be something unique. Pure Blood, of course, you joining us in the comments again, saying let's go. Indeed. So we've got 58 minutes left of the session. We're just under that, of course. We've got all of the regular drivers back on the grid. What are we expecting to see from the likes of Sergio Perez, I suppose, and McLarens and Mercedes, I suppose?
Well, I think Sergio Perez is wanting to have a good race weekend. Of course, it's his home Grand Prix. He's going to have to really get to grips with this car over the practice session. We're seeing him at the moment. I think he's on a hot lap. No, he's not. His wing is closed as he's warming up his tyres. He is still on his out lap. But we're expecting him to want to really put on a good show for his home crowd. But what can he do to match Max Verstappen? I don't know if he will be able to be better than Verstappen, but I'm sure he'll try whatever he can to do it in front of his home fans.
Indeed. So we just put up a new poll. You guys can be sure to go and check it out and participate in it. Who's going to go quickest in FP2?
I'm going for Albon.
You're going to say Albon. So let's see if the comments will follow you with regards to that.
There we go. So far, they're all agreeing with me. 50% going for Albon.
No, let's see if Albon will go quickest. I don't think he will. Personally, I think it will be Max Verstappen.
Don't be such a downer.
Not a
Just
downer,
being
just
at
being
the
a
moment.
realist. But yes, so Russell starting at what am I saying? Perez starting one of our first hot laps of the day. Or having said that, Ricciardo has just put in and finished up his lap at 120.5. So that's very quick to start straight away on hards as well. That's very, very quick from Ricciardo to start. So could be a good indicator for the session. So surely we'll see much, much quicker times.
I mean, Piastri finishes behind that on a set of mediums with 121.9. Ricciardo really has done a very good lap there. It might be on low fuel, so that could be why. But we're seeing a whole bunch of other drivers as well finishing up their lap times now. We've got, it says Haja. I assume that would be Yuki Tsunoda. They haven't changed out the names just yet for that. As well as Charles Leclerc has put himself into P3 with a 121.5, and that's now been taken away by his teammate Carlos Sainz with a 121.2, and now it's been taken away by Logan Sargent, who moves himself up into P2. Much better from Logan Sargent.
And now Alonso, 120.7, he moves into P2 ahead of Logan Sargent.
Lots of times being put in by multiple different types of tyres as well.
The interesting thing here is we're already seeing Sargent, Alonso, Ricciardo, very different manufacturers across the board there, all moving into the 120 straight away at the beginning of the session. As we now see Lance Stroll goes quickest around here at 120.39. So I think we will get into the 119s very quickly in this session.
I think we could get into the 118s, maybe the 117s the session. As now Lando Norris goes on the brink of the 119s with a 120.1 into first place. Certainly this track is evolving quite quickly out here.
Indeed. So just noting Leclerc's got a 120.39. I think though
I think it may have been deleted for track limits.
But
or
why would they delete it off the normal timing boards? They normally don't do that. But yeah, we'll have a look at that. We definitely saw Leclerc go quite quickly around here, but it seems not to have counted on our boards. But oh well, we'll see what happens with regards to that. Somebody there, Percy, saying let's go Logan. So somebody's supporting Logan Sargent. A rarity. No, it's not that rare to be fair. But yes, so he's not done too badly there. He's up in 5th. He's ahead of a few drivers, not too many, but we're going to have more and more drivers make their way out onto track, as Max Verstappen has also made his way out now.
A lot of drivers backing themselves up in that final set of corners. I think I saw a few spots of rain there into that final sector, possibly just a few loose drops from that cloud overhead. But we're seeing Logan Sargent flying, also it's Alex Albon rather, flying down this long main start-finish straight to start up his next hot lap.
Yeah, so we've got a whole lot of different constructors in the top 5, which is very interesting to see. We've got a McLaren, then a Ferrari, but that's still not registered on our timing board, so I don't quite know why.
It's certainly up on Formula One's timing boards. Verstappen confirming what I thought, saying it's raining here a little bit, I think. Albon 0.1 up in the first sector.
Yeah, Albon going very quick in the first sector, but already Ocon has beaten that time. So Ocon has gone quicker in the first sector already, so he's taken that away from Alex Albon, who's still continuing on in his lap. Alex Albon now at 31.5 in the second sector. Not a brilliant second sector, although I think almost watching, just trying to see, understand. Our timing boards are a little bit off with regards to what's being shown on screen. But let's see where he finishes up. I think Ocon is Albon. All of our timings are all over the place. Like this, I'm just noting. Yeah, so we're going to have to use F1's official thing because our current boards are not quite correct.
Maybe we should try and run the other one that we use the map from. Maybe they may be better if we can swap over to them. But just looking at Alex Albon at the moment, what he's doing out on track, he finishes up a lap, moves himself up into second with I'm trying to see, it's a 1:20.3. Relatively good lap time from him there.
Yeah, so we're not going to be able to, unfortunately, get those things for you, but we will let you know exactly what's happening as Max Verstappen does now go quicker. So some of the drivers are correct, some of them are a little bit off. So we'll bring that to you as we do see rain in the pit lane.
It's raining quite a lot in the pit lane as we're seeing overhead on the radar. It's just ever so slightly catching the corner of this track, so it shouldn't affect the running too much, but we'll have to see how long it does affect that first few corners.
So right now we have Max Verstappen in first at 1:20.085. Norris in second. Albon is in fact third. Then Leclerc, not Stroll, so that would make a lot more sense. Then Ricciardo, then Sainz, then Zhou, then Perez, then Sargent, then Piastri. That makes up our top 10. So it is quite different to what you might be seeing at home. So just listen to us. The words are correct, not necessarily the timing board that we have, unfortunately, for you. We'll try and get that fixed as soon as possible. So 52 minutes left of the session already. We've passed 8 minutes. They've flown by, if I must be honest. And, I mean, I thought we'd be in the 119 straight away, pretty much, given the fact that we started so quickly on those low 120s. But Max Verstappen missed out on the 119, and everybody else seems to have missed out on the 2.
Well, I think because it just started raining there at the end, so that may have taken out quite a lot of grip as we're seeing Sergio Perez come through that final corner where it is still raining, but then as you move down that start-finish straight, you move away from that cloud and just get away from the raindrops as we see now on this camera view. Halfway down that main straight, it's sunny again.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that much rain. It's more like just drips and drabs of like almost like drizzle, but it's certainly some parts of water dropping onto the track. Just at the beginning there, the very last corner of the track. So I don't think it really affects anybody's times all that much because it's not enough to even really worry.
It would slow you down in that final corner. It's a really high-speed corner that you can run a lot of speed through if it's dry. But we're seeing Sergio Perez struggling a little bit on this lap. He's already 0.2 down from Max Verstappen in the first sector. What will he be able to do through the remainder of his lap as Verstappen's going out on another hot lap?
Yeah, Verstappen, as you say, going on another hot lap, has already set a new purple sector in Sector 1. So following his lap with keen interest here, Perez's time. Let's see who is Perez. Perez is actually Alonso.
Half a second down now on Verstappen as he comes through that middle sector. Coming through the final sector now where we are seeing that little bit of rain. It does seem to be easing up a bit, but you can still see those drops of rain through there as he comes through the final corner. Now, where does he move himself up into? He crosses the line and he goes only 8th on that test tyre.
So Perez is technically Alonso on our timing boards there. So just so you're aware, as Albon goes quickest there, 1:20.075. Verstappen's just about to finish up his lap, so he will probably move back into first position. No, he doesn't. He loses time in that second sector and as a result does not move ahead. So right now Albon is leading this practice session.
Just watching a moment from Lando Norris through the middle sector. He gets quite squirrely through that S bend and just has a massive snap of oversteer, manages to catch the car though and continue on his lap. Watching Esteban Ocon start a lap now as well. What can he do throughout the remainder of this session? I think that is Esteban Ocon. No, it's Pierre Gasly.
Pierre Gasly now starting his lap.
So.
Yes, indeed. So, Alex Albon currently leads the FP2 session 0.01 seconds behind is Max Verstappen. Norris in third. Leclerc fourth. Ricciardo fifth. Ricciardo's time is still standing very strong there, up in fifth there for the AlphaTauri. So he had a brilliant run right at the beginning of the session, and hopefully that's a precursor for what we could expect from him this weekend.
Yes, just watching through the lap, the timing boards at the moment, who is setting any purple sectors. I don't really see anything out there at the moment. Pierre Gasly is still on that lap right now as he comes through turn 6 and 7. Quite a tricky double right-hander through there, and then you come through that S bend sector where we did see Lando Norris having a bit of a snap of oversteer. Much more neat and tidy for Pierre Gasly through there as he comes through turn 10 and 11. Really high speed sector through there. You go through in about 6th or 7th gear depending on your car's ratio. He's 0.4 down though on Albon's time. It's so weird to say Albon's time. Albon is all the way up in P1 right now.
Yeah, Albon just continuing on where he left off in FP1, still motoring around the track and currently sits at the top of our time boards for FP2 already. So Sainz now on the Ferrari saying no more rain expected, so it should be dry for the remainder of the session, so at least everybody doesn't have to be too concerned about whether or not it was going to continue raining. So the rest of the session, we've still got 47 minutes left, so we're almost 15 minutes in. But Mexico City, just interestingly enough, is situated 2,200 meters above sea level and has an approximate air pressure decrease of over 20%. So that significantly affects the car's air intake, which means that you could see overheating engines.
Well, we've seen on the Alpines as well as the Hasses for this race weekend, they've brought in massive sized vents for their engines to allow them to cool a lot better, because I think they are quite worried about the cooling around the circuit.
Yeah, so that's certainly one of the big changes that we've seen from a couple of teams. And let's see how the airflow intake for some of these cars works. Of course, as we've already mentioned, 20% less air. It's quite a lot when you consider these cars, like, they require the minimalist amount of change across all the various circuits in all the...
Not necessarily all of the teams, because Red Bull's engines are made in Japan. I think they're made at a bit of a higher altitude, so they also do tune their engine to work better at around different circuits. They can tune these engines. They are very finicky pieces of equipment, but they can still be forced to do work sometimes as they go around these circuits, and as George Russell comes down the start-finish straight at about 340 kilometers an hour before the braking zone.
Yeah, so looking at our top 5, Albon in first, Verstappen second, Norris in third, Leclerc is in fourth, and Alonso is up there in fifth for the Aston Martin team. So good to see Alonso's time standing quite well right now. He has knocked Ricciardo down behind him, as Sainz, of course, Sainz down in 6th, Ricciardo now 7th. Perez is all the way down in 11th.
Verstappen on the radio just saying, just check on the rear right tyre. I think there is a tear off that is still stuck there on the suspension. So possibly just seeing that in his rearview mirror and worried that it might affect his brake ducts. George Russell going around out on track. I thought he may have been finishing up a hot lap, but it seems he's doing some race runs here. Bit twitchy through the middle sector there. Now coming through that final sector of the circuit.
Yeah, it's not too slow down on Albon though, given the fact, I mean, look, he's on medium tyres, so one hopes he would be a bit quicker because Albon completed his on test tyres, which is pretty much the same as what Russell's on.
Mediums or softs.
Yeah, so Russell's time is a little bit slower than Albon's, but as we say, we expect high fuel, maybe race simulations. We saw that from Mercedes in FP1. We might be seeing that again in FP2. As you see, he doesn't let up on the throttle. As we're in the pit lane here, whose car are we working on?
This is Lance Stroll. They're doing some... So when they wear those outfits, that's normally when they're doing some work on the carbon fiber. I think they are fixing up some little pieces on the floor there of Lance Stroll's car by the looks of things.
So... looking here, Verstappen, of course, still... Now, Verstappen, sorry, going on another hot lap here. He's got a middle sector that's purple. And he does now go quickest. There you go. 1:19.5. Significantly quicker than Alex Albon's time. Almost half a second.
Yes, the first 119 of this session as the Oscar Piastri joins him now with a 119.865. Daniel Ricciardo also puts himself up now in second. We're seeing this track evolve quite quickly as they're going out on a set of mediums. And yeah, we're seeing Lance Stroll as well, setting a really fast first sector. This track is really coming alive. Charles Leclerc as well, also going out quite quickly at the moment on a set of mediums. The house of Kevin Magnussen keeping well out the way as Mark is just going to go grab some water so we don't die here in commentary. But some really, really fast lap times being put at the moment. Really excited to see the fact that Daniel Ricciardo has found a handful of time ahead of the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. Carlos Sainz now puts himself behind Daniel Ricciardo in third. Where can his teammate put himself? He's got a fastest first sector. Lance Stroll now moves himself up into P2. Brilliant from Lance Stroll there. Just watching as the rest of these drivers now come around the final few bends. As Carlos Sainz, I did say earlier, his lap time was a 119.8 on a set of mediums. Daniel Ricciardo finished up his lap time on a set of test tyres. As we see Charles Leclerc cross the finish line, he is Stroll on our timing boards. That's why I got a bit confused. But Charles Leclerc now moves himself up into P2, 0.1 seconds behind Max Verstappen. We're finally seeing some good pace out from the Ferraris, who first appeared in Mexico as an FP1 driver for Sauber in the 2017 season. So that is where Charles Leclerc took his Formula 1 debut. Could he have another great weekend out? This weekend, watching a big lockup from Fernando Alonso on one of his hot laps there. He would have lost quite a lot of time doing that, as we're also watching a big lockup from George Russell into turn 1. Probably destroying that tyre quite a bit, as we're seeing a bit of a flat spot on there. We're seeing Yuki Tsunoda though in the pit lane at the moment, as we're also watching Nico Hülkenberg get a little bit late on the brakes and having a big snap of oversteer as he comes through. I think that is corner 2 or 3 there. Just watching now Lance Stroll, who's out onto track after having his floor. I think it was mended there. He's coming out on a hot lap now through turn 2 and 3. Watching what he can do out on circuit at the moment as Max Verstappen, Alex Albon, Lando Norris, Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Zhou Guanyu, Nico Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez, Logan Sargent, Piastri, and Yuki Tsunoda are still all in the pits. We've got Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, George Russell, Hamilton, Magnussen, and Stroll all out on circuit at the moment as George Russell finishes up on a lap and puts himself into P6 with a 120.5. Not too bad for himself. We'd expect them to get a little bit higher up. Waiting to see what Lewis Hamilton can do. He's out there on a set of medium tyres right now, as we're watching Lance Stroll as well out on track at the moment as I get handed a glass of water. Thank you very much, as Mark steps back into the commentary box. Valtteri Bottas fastest in the middle sector now. Still looking a little bit dark though over that Foro Sol grandstand there in that old baseball stadium around turn 1 and that start-finish straight. It is looking quite dark through there. Maybe we could get this rain returning, as it's getting very, very gloomy.
Well, they did say it was not scheduled for the rest of the session, but as you say, the cloud is very much looming overhead, and it's even darker than it was before, so might well actually affect it.
Yes, just watching Daniel Ricciardo now coming around the final few corners here, turn 16 and 17. He's going on a second push lap on those test tyres. He comes across the line. He doesn't improve on his lap time, or does he a little bit? I don't think so, no, with a 116.6. Well, 119.6 rather, sorry. 0.178 behind Max Verstappen there. Still a little bit of time for him to find, but I think quite positive for him at the moment. I wonder if those test tyres are possibly a set of softs, as we're watching, I think, his Issa Kadja there on the pit wall for AlphaTauri now in their session. He certainly said that he enjoyed his session out there in FP1, going, that was the greatest experience of my life, I heard him say at the end of that FP1 session.
Yeah, indeed. So just to clarify something for some people, unfortunately, right now, our timing boards aren't quite correct. So our actual timing boards have in our top 6 there, just confirming that it's not 3 Aussies. There is 1, but there aren't 3. It's Verstappen in first, Leclerc in second, Ricciardo third. Ricciardo doing very well there on those testing set of tyres. 4th is Sainz, 5th is Bottas, also doing very well in that Alfa Romeo, and 6th is Russell in that Mercedes.
Oscar Piastri, the other Aussie, is currently out there on a set of soft tyres. He's down in 18th right now. We're seeing that McLaren also running those massive big cooling vents on their car for this race weekend, also trying to optimize the cooling of the engine, optimizing the efficiency around the circuit where every percentage, I guess, of air that goes into that engine counts. We're seeing those clouds building quite massively in the background there. As TC says, when the teams put a reserve driver in to do some miles, can the team choose which driver the reserve driver replaces, or both main drivers need to be replaced by the reserve driver? I think you can choose throughout the race weekend.
Yeah, so you can choose which drivers utilize. There isn't just one reserve driver for each team. They're not quite as...
They often have a list of reserve drivers, to be honest.
So hence,
they all race in different series. Their calendars might clash with Formula 1. So often we do get multiple different reserve drivers.
And we have seen that especially for Aston Martin, of course, because throughout the season we've had both Felipe Drugovich being one of the main reserve drivers for Aston Martin, but of course the other side, I think, I'm trying to remember the other reserve driver for Aston Martin who was also almost dubbed to take over from Last Stroll during the middle of the season. No, I was ready to tell him. It's the other one. There's another one as well that
I thought it was Felipe Drugovich, but...
No, he did come in. I'm just saying that Felipe Drugovich did come in. But there was the other one that was also tipped to come in again.
Yeah, I thought that was Felipe Drugovich is what I was saying. But Oscar Piastri currently going 0.1 up on Verstappen in the first sector. Not the fastest first sector, as I think someone else did go even faster. What can Piastri do now? He goes faster in the middle sector with a 30.7. So on your timing boards, Teo Porcher is Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, so we can see there, fastest middle sector, 30.7. He's gone very quickly in the first sector, quicker than Max Verstappen. So this could very well be...
on a set of soft
tires.
Of
course, but let's see. I think this could be a 118 even, depending on how he does. Oh, so close. A 119.163. Very, very close to the 118s.
Very, very close. Much faster than what Max Verstappen put in, but you would expect Max Verstappen to be able to go much quicker on a set of soft tyres when he eventually goes out.
Stop taking away from Piastri. He's currently sitting on first.
I know.
We know Verstappen's going to go quicker, but for now, let's celebrate other people who are currently topping our board.
Now we currently have 2 Aussies in the top 5.
There you go.
There you go. Oh,
we have our 2 Aussies in the top 5. Still waiting. Oh, we can't get another one, unfortunately. There's no one else out on the circuit that is an Australian. So both Aussies are in the top 5. Just looking here, the gap to the fastest, the average time gained or / lost from Bahrain to Austin. So looking at this, so we're seeing that Ferrari has actually lost time throughout the season. Red Bull, of course, has not changed.
McLaren, of course, being the biggest gainer throughout
made up
the entire
almost a whole second.
Yes. Phenomenal.
Almost a whole second. Mercedes have made up 0.09 seconds. Alpine 0.06. AlphaTauri quite significantly 0.3.
They have got big upgrades.
Aston Martin, look at how much time they've lost out the season. Almost half a second. Just shows you exactly how they had brilliant start and they've really tampered off towards the end of the season. Haas also lost 0.4 seconds out the season, and Williams 0.28. Very interesting graphic, this, of course. Just showing the development of the cars versus the fastest on the grid being Red Bull and whereabouts they have gained up to that Red Bull time. And yeah, you can see the gains and the losses across the board.
And of course, it shows you how important it is in Formula 1 to keep up your development throughout the season. Otherwise, you will just fall short to all of your competitors. Just watching Alex Albon out on track at the moment. He is currently sitting in 8th. He's out on a set of soft tyres now on a hot lap. Where can he put himself right now? He's fastest in the first sector, Mark.
He is fastest in the first sector. He is Ocon on your timing boards, just by the way.
The Albon is not Albon. Albon is Stroll. Yes, the time. Yes, on our timing board.
He's Ocon. So Ocon is Stroll.
I'm saying that name Albon is Stroll.
It's
the
all
name
confusing.
Ocon is Albon.
It's very confusing.
Yeah,
as Albon is very, very close to the top there. And oh my word, just misses out on first there. And he moves into second position at 119.446. As now... is that Logan Sargent potentially, or Perez rather? I think it's Perez who has now set the fast. Yeah, Perez.
Yellow flag out on circuit. Yellow flag. We don't know who that is for. That is now a double waved yellow. So the car has stopped, but they have now waved green yet again, possibly for a bit of a moment. Fernando Alonso.
It is no, it's Perez that is going quickest there. That's what it is. Perez is Alonso on our timing board.
Ooh,
oh my word!
Big spin for Fernando Alonso. We're finally seeing that moment that caused that yellow flag. Amazing that he was able to catch that car from that moment, but that was a really high-speed moment there for his car. Those new soft tires will probably be quite destroyed from that. His heart will be really racing.
I was about to say, I think he was very close to a much bigger accident than that. Luckily managed to keep it out of anything, and he's got the car going. Nothing wrong. Maybe a little bit fly.
Fine.
Even the tires look fine. Just want to watch a replay of exactly what happens here. Maybe just catch the curb a little bit too much.
I was going to think maybe
he does
a little bit wide over the curb. He does well to keep his tires rolling, so he doesn't actually lock it too much. But he looks quite like breathless after that moment in the cockpit. I'm sure that would have been quite a heart-wrenching moment, a gut-dropping moment as well.
Yeah, indeed. So that's the first real moment we've had the entire day, including FP1. It's our first major moment. We did have a small moment from, I think it was Lewis Hamilton, who almost lost it a little bit, but got it way before it even got anything ridiculous. Watching Logan Sargent here, who
he hits the curve.
He's done what I do in Formula 1 game all the time. He's done exactly what it is. You see, when I play F1, I hate those tiny little
bollards.
They've got those little well, I suppose we can call them a bollard, but it's
like a pole
thing. Basically, they're those plastic poles they have around the track, saying this is for track limits. Basically, the car shouldn't hit it. Every single time I play the game, I hit every single one of them. And Logan Sargent is the same as me. He's just hit one right on the on one of the apex
of turn 2, and it is now sitting on the grass by turn 3. Watching Max Verstappen go around on a set of soft tyres now, he goes fastest in the first sector with a 27.9.
Our first 27
up on everyone else in that first sector.
Our first 27.
30.9 in the middle sector.
So,
or 30.3 rather.
Are we going to see today the first 27, which we have seen, the first 29 in the second sector, and the first 19 in the third sector?
Possibly. We could see a first 118 or 117 here.
I think this is definitely going to be 118 already, because I think he's well up a Piastri. I think we could see a 117.
He does finish now with a 118.6 mark.
Yeah, so I think the 170s are very much on track here. Norris finishes up his lap right behind. Is it Norris?
Yes.
No, it's Norris. I think Norris is Norris. Norris is Norris on our timing boards, and he does finish second right behind Max Verstappen, 0.119 seconds behind him. He finishes up his lap at 118.8. So very, very good from the McLaren driver. They're still showing that McLaren have pace.
Yes, Piastri is also still in third at the moment, which is quite good. What can the likes of Lewis Hamilton do, though, as he's coming through the middle and final sector at the moment?
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton on a set of softs as well. So we're going to see some true pace from the Mercedes. Well, we'd hope we would. He's already 0.4 down on Verstappen's time. He finishes up his lap at 119.077. So almost into the 118s, to be fair to him.
That's Esteban Ocon.
Hamilton.
Ocon. Hamilton hasn't finished yet. Hamilton's about to finish up his lap now.
Hamilton has moved into fourth. Yes, he has. Yes, so
he now finishes up his lap with a 118.6. Still quite a bit behind.
119. It's just said there now. Hamilton's got a 119 there. 119.02. Hamilton is Behrman, I think he is. So still a 119.024 for Hamilton. I think it's all very confusing.
Yes.
Trying to put the two together. But nonetheless, on our proper boards here, Hamilton is currently sitting third. Ocon up in fourth.
Currently watching Nico Hülkenberg go around out on circuit. He's gone fastest in the first sector, down in the middle sector. What can he do through this final sector? Now, his car's looking quite quick out there on circuit. He finishes up his lap, though, in 7th place. And not too bad for a Haas.
No, not too bad for a Haas at all. Of course, we do see the Haas quite quick generally in these sessions that don't matter too much. But, yeah, when it comes to the race itself, they drop very far down.
This weekend is Nico Hülkenberg's 200th Grand Prix start in Formula 1. So he only becomes the 22nd driver to start his 200th Grand Prix.
Yeah, very, very impressive from him, of course, the veteran here. As we see Frederick Vesti there, the junior driver for Mercedes AMG, right behind Toto Wolff, having a look at everything, smiling at the cameras there. Yeah, he did it all right in the first session. Of course, they did a lot of testing rather than speed runs. They didn't get to see the true pace of what he could do.
Yes, as we're watching Carlos Sainz now start a hot lap in his Ferrari on a set of softs. What can he do? I think he should be relatively quick. I'm hoping the Ferraris are going to be able to match or challenge the Red Bulls and the McLarens this race weekend, as well as the Mercedes.
Yeah, so we're going to keep an eye on the Ferraris very closely here. And also let us know in the comments, guys, do you think Ferrari can compete with Red Bull this weekend? And quite frankly, do you think Ferrari could come back next season?
Daniel Ricciardo moves himself into third with a 1:19.0. Brilliant from Daniel Ricciardo. He's found a lot of pace and a lot of confidence around the circuit in that updated AlphaTauri.
Yeah, indeed. And his teammate Yuki Tsunoda is yet to come out on a set of softs. So we don't quite know how quickly he's going around, but he's all the way down in 17th, as is Fernando Alonso in 16th position.
Yes. Interesting to see Fernando Alonso hasn't come out on the set of softs. Then I remembered he had his moments on a set of softs. So hopefully he'll be going out again relatively soon. Or maybe they might have to call it a day for him, unfortunately, because they don't want to use up all of their tyre allocations before the weekend has kind of gone through too much.
Well, Tomato Head, great name, of course, saying, I think it is going to rain and you're the best F1 channel. Well, thank you so much for that. We very much appreciate your comments there. Science now, coming across the line. Where does he finish up? Very, very far down. No, not the best lap time. He could have put in only ninth.
Not great from him, as we have Cora saying, we need to keep some sort of tally. I know that Verstappen and Sainz sergeants are accurate on the board. So yes, we'll just have to try and keep you updated, or just listen to our update.
Yeah, I was about to say let's try and go through the names, but they're taking away the names, so we can't really go through it. Of course, this is practice 2 here of the Formula 1 Gran Premio della so it's the other name that they actually call it.
So it's the Mexico
official
City
name.
Grand Prix,
Yeah,
is what
essentially.
it is. Gran Premio della Ciudad de Mexico.
De Mexico, yes. So a lot of Spanish. We don't do the Spanish. As Bottas now is starting to head towards the latter end of his first pass lap on softs. I think that's what I was going to say. He did very well earlier on the testing tyres. He was quite far up the grid, and he's doing relatively okay on these softs right now. I think he could be quite near the top. Could be close to around Ocon's time right now, who currently sits in 6th. So Ocon is Hamilton on our boards. Very, very off-putting, I know. Hamilton is, in fact, Berman. It's all over the place. They don't quite know what's happened with the tyres, but we'll bring them to you as they come. As we do see, Bottas finishes up his lap, and I think he's moved right up into, I think it is even 4th position.
Sergio Perez comes into the pits now, as we do see that driver, Valtteri Bottas, he moves himself into 3rd with 1:18.9.
Yeah.
Brilliant lap time from him. We would expect that the track is evolving quite quickly now, but really good lap time from him.
Yeah, and Valtteri Bottas, interestingly enough, set the fastest speed recorded in F1 history during the Mexico Grand Prix in 2016, I think it was.
With 371 kilometers an hour.
My word, almost 400 kilometers an hour in an F1 car. I would love to see the day that happens. Hell of a quick cars these they could be. As we're watching now a replay of the home man himself, the Mexican driver Sergio Perez.
Ooh,
big drift almost.
Yeah, you can see he kicks up quite a lot of dust there, saying copy any damage we need to check for. No, he doesn't hit anything. He just goes a little bit too far offline. We've seen that happen in the past, where Valtteri Bottas kicked out his rear there, hit the car, and it kind of bit back and went straight into the barriers. So lucky he didn't have that issue, like I said Valtteri Bottas had in the past. But currently looking at the track dominance between Verstappen and Lando Norris. Lando Norris taking the majority of the lap.
Yeah, so essentially what we see is the fact that Verstappen had a much better start, going at a much quicker pace on the main straight, but then everywhere else Lando Norris is quickest, except for turns 4, 5, and 6, where clearly Verstappen made up quite a lot of time in that sector there, just to go 0.1 seconds quicker than Norris. So really, given the fact that Norris is dominant throughout almost the entire of the track, shows how much time Verstappen made up in those few sectors, very, very few little parts of the track.
Yes, just watching Oscar Piastri now, he's going out on a set of hards. We would expect him to be doing some race runs now and race sims. We're also watching Max Verstappen and a couple other drivers in the pits putting on some new tyres. We'll have to wait and see what they're going to be able to do on this next stint of the practice session. We would expect them to go more into their race simulation phase of the session. Now, watching Oscar Piastri, he is following his teammates, so maybe also just doing some slipstream runs.
Yeah, indeed. And oh my word, what just happened there? Apologies for that. So just looking at the current boards here, we've got Yuki Tsunoda right at the back there. Alonso's going out on another outlap here. One imagines he'll go out on a set of softs so that It's that's what it was. That would make sense. So just feeling what it was. Just very confused as to what had caused that little issue, but we found out what it was. Alonso now going on an outlap. I'm keen to see if he's on soft tires or not. Yuki Tsunoda still needs to get out there on soft tires, and it's very crucial to see what he can do because Ricciardo's been doing very well.
Piastri comes into the pits and does a practice pit stop. I think he puts on a set of mediums.
I think those are the testing tires.
No, there's still a set of hards that he is on. He didn't change the tires. He's come into the pits and he's going to do a practice start from the end of the pit lane.
Well, nonetheless, won't be too much. I think he'll come straight back into the pits straight after that. We are now, as Reece says, moving into the latter session here of FP2. This is going to be a different simulation session for most of everybody, which is why they're all in the pits pretty much. As Magnussen's finishing up a lap here on a set of softs. Where will he finish up as he comes through the last couple of corners here? It will be a 1:19, 1:20. Slow there for Magnussen, 1.5 seconds behind Verstappen. So really nothing to speak about too much from Kevin Magnussen. He's still down there in 18th position. Looking now at Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso. He's starting a hot lap on medium tyres.
Yes, so of course abandoned that soft run. Unfortunately, he destroyed those tyres and has lost the opportunity to go out on those soft qualifying runs. He's done it to himself, unfortunately, going a little bit too deep in one of the curbs in the middle sector. And yeah, just spinning the car, destroying those tyres, and that is his soft runs over. He's now doing some race simulations on a set of mediums.
So a lot of people in the comments talking about the weather with regards to this weekend. They think that it might rain. Do you think it's going to rain on Sunday?
Well, I did go ahead and look at the predictions, but we're seeing from Alonso's engineer saying it will be about 10 laps until rain is expected, which they said it wasn't going to be expected, but it does look like it's all just turned around now. There is a hurricane, or did I say it was a hurricane? Or yeah, some sort of weather system is off the coast of Mexico and the US, so that is certainly coming into play here. We're hoping it doesn't affect the Grand Prix on Sunday, but you never really know.
Yeah, so just trying to work out how much time is left before that rain will happen, because they said 10 to 12 laps. But in time terms, that's going to be about 5 minutes to go. So about 5 minutes, yeah, but 5 minutes before
laps.
5 minutes before the end of the session, I think we'll have rain hit us right at the end, pretty much. So if rain does hit, they'll end the session early. Of course, not the timing boards, but rather all the teams will pretty much come into the pits. They say we're not going to go back out there for 5 minutes worth of risks. Just looking at the F1 Constructors Championship and the fact that, of course, since the American Grand Prix, McLaren has for the first time this season gone ahead of Aston Martin in that Constructors Championship. Aston Martin now drop with 236 points behind McLaren, who's got now 242. So very disappointing for Aston Martin, who had such a good start to the season, and they've just not developed the car enough in the latter part of the season to keep up. And also, it doesn't help that Lance Stroll has not finished several races, of course.
Yes, of course. Just looking at the radars over the track now, you can see that weather system moving in. As we're watching now, I can see a special helmet for Valtteri Bottas. I think he only debuted that today because I didn't get to review that yesterday. Very quite cool there as he locks up coming into turn one. But what can he do throughout the rest of the session? He's been looking quite fast out on track. He did put himself up into third a little bit earlier. He's still in fourth at the moment, but Max Verstappen out on circuit on a set of mediums now doing a great
so I
run.
think everybody's soft tyre runs are pretty much done. So we're not going to see these times change all that much. All of those people attempted their fast runs on soft tyres. The 118.6 will probably stand. Verstappen now doing race runs, as Reece says, on a set of mediums, so high fueled mediums. Hence, it's a lot slower in sector one. A whole 1.4, I think it was, seconds slower than his fastest time. So we're not going to see these times change too much for many of these drivers. Most of them out on a set of mediums now, and otherwise in the pits, getting ready to go and do some strategy for the last 20 minutes of the session.
Yes, as you say, a lot of strategy runs now. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do in terms of race lap times. They're going to be a lot higher on their fuel. Of course, Max Verstappen's fastest lap time at the moment is a 1:18.6. He's going to come around the circuit now to finish up another lap. He finishes it with a 1:23.4, quite a bit off that pace of his fastest lap. But it's
race
going to
runs.
be on a lot higher set of fuel, and those tyres I think have been used in that first practice session as well.
Yeah, so it's expected, of course, that we'll see these sort of things happen. And on this date in 2013, Sebastian Vettel won his 4th and final F1 Drivers' World Championship at the Indian Grand Prix. I cannot believe that it was this long ago that Sebastian Vettel won his last championship.
2013. That is 10 years ago to the day. That is incredible to think that his dominance was so long ago now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody could remember Vettel, of course, winning Formula 1 left, right, and centre.
I think
like it
everyone
was
can
yesterday.
remember his dominance and his fight with Mark Webber as well in that team in the Multi-21 incident that went on there. Brilliant and fiery relationship that they had there in Red Bull.
Yeah, so now looking at the current Red Bulls, of course, this is Sergio Perez now starting a fast lap here on a set of testing tires or hards.
Hards.
Yeah, it is hards indeed.
As we have 19 minutes and 40 seconds left of the session now, Sergio Perez, as you say, going on another set of race runs on hards now.
Pretty much everybody's in the pits, and I'm just trying to look at certain things that we can talk about. It's the fact that Alonso and Stroll, of course, both of them weren't able to complete soft tyre runs. In the first session, they weren't particularly good either. Of course, Alonso had big issues. Not Alonso, sorry, Stroll had some big issues. But I think Alonso also had issues, didn't he?
No, Alonso had his spin there on the soft tyre.
No, but that's in the second session. I'm talking about the first session.
No, I don't think.
Nonetheless, but we haven't seen particularly good times from Aston Martin in either of these sessions. We're really hoping to see them do a little bit better, but currently sitting in 18th and 20th. Of course, they're the only two who have not done a soft tyre run. But
they have brought big upgrades, though, in Texas, so they could still be doing a lot of work to understand them there. Robert Stallard just asking, as they're in the pits, the current order from another side seems to be Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Bottas, Perez, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Ocon, Piastri, Russell, Sainz, Zhou, Albon, Hulkenberg, Gasly, Sargent, and Stroll.
That's more or less correct, except right now we've got Alonso in last.
Magnussen in 19.
So it might be correct, it might not be quite correct.
For you guys, we'll just read it through anyways. Verstappen in first place with a 118.6. Lando Norris currently on an outlap. Charles Leclerc in third. Bottas fourth. Sergio Perez in fifth. Ricciardo sixth. Hamilton seventh. Ocon eighth. Piastri ninth. Russell 10th on an outlap. Sainz on an outlap in 11th. Tsunoda 12th. Zhou Guanyu 13th. Albon 14th. Hulkenberg 15th. Gasly on an outlap 16th. Sargent on an outlap 17th. Stroll in the pits 18th. Magnussen on an outlap 19th. And Alonso down in 20th position, currently out on circuit.
And interesting to note is the fact that Logan Sargent has just told his engineers, yeah, it's raining. So the rain has arrived a lot sooner than we thought it was going to. And I think it is raining in parts of the track already. And I think it is much worse than earlier. You can see a little bit of drops on the camera already. Who's following Fernando Alonso into the final corner. You can just see the rain starting to dip here in at the end of the session. Just 20 minutes left as Fernando Alonso goes across the line to finish up, well, rather, I think, start his lap now.
I think he may just be continuously doing laps around the circuit as we're watching Mike Crack, his team principal there at Aston Martin, currently looking on at all of the data that is available to him. We'd have to expect that they are on some more race-oriented runs at the moment, we're hoping, because they haven't really shown great pace compared to those top runners at the moment. As Lando Norris comes across the line to start another race simulation. DRS closed as he comes down that start-finish straight.
Yeah, so let's go back to the comments a little bit here and just noting Cora saying, I was amazed the other day. I learned that the difference between P7 and P10 in the Constructors' Championship is $35 million. For development, if I understood it correctly, that is mad.
Yes, it certainly is relatively crazy. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the prize pot in Formula 1 and how that structure and that pay scale is worked out, do be sure to go and check out my video breaking down what happens with Andretti in Formula 1 as they have currently reached possibly a stalemate with the Formula 1 management, who have gone on to Cadillac, gone to GM personally and said, would you like to come into Formula 1, but not with Andretti? So pretty much trying to snub Andretti there and get them to come in with another existing Formula 1 team. But in that video, I did break down how it would work with an 11th team on the Formula 1 grid and how that would affect the prize pool in Formula 1.
Yeah, indeed. So it's all very interesting. Be sure to go and check out that video as Reece did put out there, Andretti versus Cadillac in terms of who's joining and how it would affect everything. We've got about 15 minutes left of this session, so we're into the last quarter here. And Percy just saying, I remember being 9 years old and watching Vettel race with my grandfather. So, yeah, I mean, very, very interesting times. I remember watching Formula One, and pretty much Vettel was one of the first drivers I really got behind and really enjoyed. Watching a replay now of Carlos Sainz just really hitting these curbs quite hard and
He went
bouncing
over where
around.
that bollard normally is that Logan Sargent took out. So now he's just taking full advantage of that curb into turn 2.
Indeed. And TC also just noting the fact that Hamilton is only in 7th.
Yes, he could be on another run relatively soon. He is currently out on track. I think he's on a set of medium tyres. What can he do out there as Yuki Tsunoda is currently coming down the start-finish straight on his set of mediums? He needs to do a little bit better to be able to match his teammate Daniel Ricciardo out on track. Daniel Ricciardo is currently up in P6, and as I said, Yuki Tsunoda down in P12.
Yeah, so Yuki Tsunoda really struggling to match his teammate. Of course, Yuki Tsunoda's quickest time has only put him in 12th position versus Ricciardo in 6th. So they both had a soft tyre attempt. They both had a real go in terms of trying to go around quickest. Ricciardo significantly beat Tsunoda by 0.3 seconds. So Tsunoda's got a lot of work to do this weekend to try and come back at his teammate.
Yes, certainly. He's lost a bit of momentum from where he was in the first half of the return from the summer break. And Daniel Ricciardo seems to have been able to pick up his pace off the back of last weekend's Austin Grand Prix. Possibly just understanding the upgrades to this car a bit better. And of course, he did have a couple-week break due to his broken hand. So it would take a lot of time for him to get back. TC saying, when I first started watching Formula 1, it was the Prost versus Senna versus Mansell era. Yes, I'm old. LOL. Percy also just going on to say, the Vettel hype in Germany was insane because you were obviously proud. There was no way to know about him, even if you had no idea about anything regarding Formula 1.
Yeah, I mean...
there was no way not to know about him, rather.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine you can't get away with it when you've got somebody of that sort of stature in racing, and of course Germany being quite a motorsport nation, having a driver doing exceptionally well there must have been very much quite exciting.
Lewis Hamilton in the UK, they become a national treasure, essentially, in their home country.
Yeah, so, Vettel, of course, retiring at the end of last season. Very upsetting for many, many F1 fans, including myself. Many would love to have seen him stay and, take the place of a particular Lance Stroll. And maybe have seen Vettel and Alonso together as teammates.
And Vettel at Audi in the future. That would have been an amazing pairing. Just looking at some analysis of this McLaren rear, the whole clamshell near the back of that car, well, the clamshell, but the entire engine packaging and how they put some shoulders in that back area just to better flow the air around that rear wing. It's similar to what the Mercedes have, where they have those kind of shoulders that run the entire length of the car just to better direct the air to the rear wing. We see it in a different way on the back of the Alpine car, which is what we're seeing some pictures of at the moment. Lewis Hamilton currently out on track though on a set of mediums. We're seeing a few spots of rain on his visor at the moment as he comes through that middle sector at the moment.
There's a lot of at the moments in that sentence. As Hamilton's now coming towards Sector 2. And I'm hoping to see him get relatively close to Verstappen's race simulation times. Verstappen set a 58.3 on his softs. Hamilton should be hopefully within 3 seconds of that in the mediums to be quite quick, about 4 seconds behind. So a little bit slower than the Red Bulls. And I'm hoping to see more from Mercedes for the race this weekend.
Yes, they don't seem to have the pace of the rest of the grid right now, but hopefully with the understanding that they've gotten of their new upgrades, they should be able to take a step forward in performance tomorrow when they do possibly put in their race engine, they put in their qualifying gearbox, possibly just starting to drop the floor a little bit more to find some more performance. That's what they normally do in preparation for qualifying. We don't know. We don't necessarily know what their own plans are, and that makes all the difference. As we're seeing Mick Schumacher also sitting in the Mercedes pit garage at the moment on the left of Toto Wolff. What will we see from Mick Schumacher in the future? Currently, there's a lot of talks about him going to Alpine's World Endurance Championship team, as we see Lewis Hamilton having a bit of a nasty little middle sector there, as he gets quite loose and
lots of twitches
untidy
there
through turn 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, so he will want to try and clean that up before he gets to qualifying tomorrow. He's still got another practice session in order to do so. And, of course, practice session 3 will be streamed live here on the channel tomorrow evening. And it is going to be far more of a qualifying type session. We've always said it. For all that we say, look for today's times for accuracy with regards to what happens in qualifying. It never really happens.
Most close.
FP3, even though it is so much earlier in the day, so it's much hotter, we do find everybody goes and does their qualifying simulations then and there in that last session. So it's a little bit more of an interesting practice session for us to join. As we do see, it is currently a rainy track, is what it's called. So DRS is not enabled. Just interestingly enough, just to go and note that. But yeah, so you can catch qualifying and the practice 3 session here on the channel tomorrow. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video.
Well, it's been declared a wet circuit, but all the drivers are still out on dry tyres at the moment. We're seeing a bit of work going on in the pit lane of Aston Martin, possibly just getting ready for that car of Fernando Alonso to get back. Maybe making some more setup changes. There's hammers. Jeremy Clarkson's toolbox has been brought out for the session.
And there's a lot of hammers, so Jeremy Clarkson, we're very happy. Perez just saying the rain is picking up in the last sector, so I think we're going to start seeing some more rain. So some of them are trying to get some lap times out right before the rain starts to hit. As we do see, I think this is Lance Stroll on a set of softs, wants to get out there as quickly as possible. So Lance Stroll's going to go and use his softs to go and see how quick does Aston Martin go around. It'll be interesting to see, of course, only the Aston Martins have not set a soft tyre run yet in this session. So let's see how they do. I was watching a replay of Esteban Ocon. His floor was dragging.
Alexander Albon.
That's what I meant.
I think he's caused some damage there, as you can see a bit of carbon fiber touching the ground. Just watching where he may have caused that damage coming over the curbs, it's quite spectacular to see it sparking away there. It's definitely not the skid blocks on the bottom of the skid plane. It's unfortunately the side of his floor, so that could be some floor damage for him, possibly needing a new floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not good for Alexander Albon.
Hopefully it's only a small piece that can be repaired relatively quickly. Sometimes those little aerodynamic carbon veins are relatively flimsy and can get damaged going over the curbs.
Yeah, so we'll see if that can be fixed quite quickly there. Tomato Head saying is going to rain in qualifying. What if it does rain during qualifying? That'll throw a big spanner in the works. Of course, you know, it'll be creating red flags, yellow flags. Certain drivers could fall out that are unexpected to have done so. It allows for very, very, very different times and varying times around the circuit if that should happen. So DRS is not enabled. Some cars benefit a lot more from DRS than others. It's going to be certainly interesting if it does rain. At the moment, though, we're going to assume it doesn't. And based off these times, the Red Bulls, McLarens, and Ferraris are looking strong. The Mercedes, for all that we thought they would be decent, not as so.
No, certainly not just yet, but as I did say, they possibly could be able to find a bit more performance tomorrow in that free practice 3 session. TC saying, I don't bet often, but next year I might put my entire savings and betting Red Bull and Max Verstappen on winning the championships, lol. Well, do be sure to go and check our channel partners, BITDEFENDER and BOYLESPORTS. BOYLESPORTS for all of your betting needs there. Do be sure to go and check all of those links in our description of this video. If you want to go and put your money where your mouth is, do be sure to go and check out BOYLESPORTS.
And of course, whilst we're there, and if you need to be secure in doing your betting and you need to make sure that you're on a private server that nobody's going to be able to access, be sure to go check out our other partner, BITDEFENDER. BITDEFENDER can be sure to make sure that you are secure, as Leclerc was not in this sector. Horrible sector there from Leclerc. Just hit every single curb. A little bit too much, hitting the apex too much. Literally, the car was flying a little bit. Yeah, so Leclerc clearly needs a bit of BITDEFENDER. BITDEFENDER does sponsor Ferrari, so maybe just needs a little bit more in the system so they can allow the car to be a little bit more smooth. Stroll on these soft tyres has gone worse in Sector 1. He's actually given up. He's already taken his foot off the pedal there. Clearly, he had a bit of an issue in Sector 1. He must have made a mistake somewhere, which resulted in that slow time. So both Stroll and Alonso messed up their soft tyre runs.
Yes, both drivers not being able to extract that performance from their Aston Martin car with the new upgrades. Lance Stroll now does open that DRS again. So it is declared a wet track, but the DRS does still open.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. That shouldn't really happen. As we see, tyre blankets are making their way onto Alexander Albon's car. It doesn't look like they're rushing around too much in that Williams box. I'm not sure they're going to get him back out there. Well, having said
They're
that,
checking the floor now.
yeah, they're checking the floor. Doesn't seem like there's too much of a rush though to get him out for the remainder of the session. I think they're going to call it for the session and call it for the day.
Well, I think they're going to see what the damage is first and then make a decision based on that. If it can be fixed relatively quickly, then hopefully they should be able to send him back out there. But we'll have to wait and see what does happen over here. As we're watching, Lando Norris still out on track on a set of mediums. He's been on those tyres for quite some time now. As we're seeing a few more comments there, and TC says she'll check, or they'll check the links in the description there. Yeah.
Tomato Head asking, do you think rain can stop Red Bull?
No.
Well,
Red Bull quite like the rain, to be
I was
honest.
about to say, and Max Verstappen especially loves the rain. So I don't think that's going to be the case, as Reece says. Core is just saying, I think it's going to be an interesting qualifying if it does rain, though. Certain qualifying will be very interesting, as we have seen multiple big-name drivers crash out in qualifying early on, and as a result, they have to start the race quite far back, which is never ideal for any top driver and for any top team.
Yes, and I think something as well that we're going to have to look at for the qualifying session tomorrow evening is going to be track limits around here. It is a really tricky circuit. Aren't the stewards going to be relatively strict on track limits this weekend? They were very strict in Austin, Texas, so you would expect them to carry that momentum onwards to this race weekend.
Yeah, of course, the big thing about this track, though, is that they shouldn't really be too strict on track limits, because if you do go off the track limits here, it actually hinders you a lot more than it favors you, as we have seen these bollards and these curbs really do catch the floors of these cars. They spin them around. We've seen it from Fernando Alonso, we've seen it from Hamilton and Norris, and pretty much everybody in the grid bar a couple. You know, that if you go over some of these apexes a little bit too hard, where your tires pretty much are off the track limits, you actually hinder your car's lap a lot worse than if you had, if you had actually just stayed in track limits. So I don't think they'll be as strict, but maybe just for safety reasons, they'll be a little more strict. So we've seen the speed trap here. Seen both the Haas's clock 351 kilometers quicker than anybody else. Lando Norris at 350 kilometers in the McLaren. So Haas's in the McLaren, the quickest around the circuit so far.
Interesting to see, though, because that's what both of those cars are customer teams. They both don't run their own engines. One is a Ferrari engine, of course, in the Haas, and the other is a Mercedes engine in that McLaren. Watching Yuki Tsunoda now coming around the track as we have only 3 minutes left of the session out here in Mexico City. What can Yuki Tsunoda do? Can he get a little bit closer to his teammate Daniel Ricciardo up in P6 at the moment? He's on a set of medium tyres now, so he wouldn't be able to improve.
No, very much race runs at the end of the session. We're not going to see any of those times change. So we've got just over about 2.5 minutes left of the session. So let us know in the comments, guys, what did you make of the session? What did you make of the day in terms of reviewing it, and who is your it is very late, I can say that much, very much so. But who is your standout driver of the day? Of course, unfortunately, Albon is nowhere near the top as he was in the first session. We see Perez is up in there fifth. Bottas in the second session has brought a bit of a standout up there in fourth for Alfa Romeo. Norris in second for that McLaren. Hamilton and Russell not doing too well in the Mercedes in 7th and 10th, as we see a little bit more of that rain dropping in that final sector there as Tsunoda finishes up a lap on mediums for race simulations here.
Yes, and that has pretty much been it for the remainder of the session with regards to their testing. They've just been doing race simulations on mediums, hards, and I think we just had Lance Stroll out on a set of softs, but he wasn't able to improve on his lap time.
No, and indeed, with a little bit of rain there, I don't think anybody's keen to get any of these cars out. Looks like Aston Martin have given up on Fernando Alonso's car. They've got 1 minute and 40 seconds to get him out there. I don't think they're going to send him out. There's not too much movement around the garage.
For
maybe a practice start.
Start, yes.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like. It looks like they might start him for practice start, as we do see the car being lifted, perhaps to get those blankets off. So we're right into the final 90 seconds of the session, as we do see maybe one potential person who could try and change things up. It's Oscar Piastri's come on a set of softs right at the end of the session.
Will he be able to ruin Max Verstappen's weekend by taking away one of his sessions? One of his session toppers, as he doesn't. He's on a set I think he's on a set of scrubbed tyres and is doing some race sims on those softs. Very, very important information for the McLarens. That could be because they've actually completed their race runs already and just have a bit of extra time to do some experiments.
Yeah, so Piastri going out on a set of softs, as we said, probably scrubbed softs. quite a bit slower than Max Verstappen's time right now. He's put up with a lot of traffic during this lap as well, which doesn't help him. But certainly not a qualifying attempt. I'm not even sure his DRS was actually open or has been opening.
Not.
So very much just race simulation here on a set of softs, as Reece says. So very important information. Seems to be going around quite well as well.
Yes, certainly finding quite a bit of pace around the circuit, of course. Bit down on those fast times because of the fact that he does have a lot of fuel on board, because we expect him to be doing some race sims. As the clock now does tick, 20 seconds left to go. Piastri crossed the line just in time. He'll go around one more time and then do a practice start.
And Percy just saying in the comments, I don't dare hope, but it would be so funny if he were to beat Max's time. Piastri, of course, that he hasn't, unfortunately. He's crossed the line nowhere near. As we do see a little bit of rain falling into the McLaren pit wall there. It's very, very light. It's really not that serious at all. But certainly the rain has been a little bit of a small hindering factor in the final sector throughout the session.
Certainly was not predicted ahead of this Grand Prix race weekend. Everything that I went out and checked said that there wouldn't be any rain.
Well, and everyone's talking about rain in the qualifying and rain in the race itself. Stunning pictures of Mexico City there. With regards to the sun coming through the clouds there, shining onto parts of the city as we see the racetrack there in the shadow. As now the checkered flag is waved, and we do have the end of the session. Max Verstappen will end it with a 1:18.686, a very quick time there from him.
Yes, and we're going to move across into our review session very shortly, so do be sure to stick around. You should be kicked across to that immediately. So thank you very much for joining us here on Forever Motorsports for our FP2 session here. I've been Reece on Forever Motorsports, joined by Mark. Thank you